The purpose of today's video is mainly to talk about rocker arms. There's been several threads on the Mopar sites about these Canadian rocker arms. Do they work? Do they fit? Will they fit the Edelbrock heads on the exhaust hole? You know, and these people need answers. They're looking at this price and they've got questions. I got an email this morning from a guy in Norway, and he wants to know, what do I do for rocker arms? He said, Ray Barton's rocker arms are $2,000 more money, and will these do my job? Well, let's try to find out today. And so these questions have to be answered. If these rocker arms would work, and we kind of wish they would, this is a viable option for some people. Not everybody has $5,000 for rocker arms. Building the rest of this thing is about to break them, and they need to know, is this an option? I'm mainly dealing today with roller rockers. The stock rockers, yes, they were great for winning Daytona in '64 and for the 10 or 11,000 people with street Hemis and everything. But every time I've torn a street Hemi down, the guides were shot, and I just felt that was the scuffing of the tips on the, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I don't know, but I always blamed it on the rocker arms. And so I've always been a rocker guy. Besides that, roller rockers are prettier. And I like pretty, And so there's probably 1,000 guys who are going to need rocker arms for a Hemi or one they're wanting to build. And so we need to know if these are an option. And we'll mainly be dealing with Edelbrock heads because, as you know, we can't get Mopar heads anymore. And we can't get Stage 5 heads anymore. And we can't get Keith Black heads anymore. And so we want to know if they fit. I'm going to go take the rocker arms off the test stand engine, and we're going to put these on there, and we're going to check to see if they'll clear the exhaust pushrod hole, and we're going to check to see what the sweep is on the top of the valve stem, see what that looks like, and just see if if that's going to help us. It's not going to tell us, will these last 50,000 miles? Will these last with a 800 lift roller cam drag racing, 1,000 pounds of open pressure? We can't learn that today, but we can learn if these are a viable option for people to try. There's a lot of cars out there with 500 lift camshafts. I never even hear of people breaking roller or Hemi rocker arms. You very rarely hear that. I mean, never in a street application. But let's get started. Let's go tear the other thing down and see how this works. While we've got some other rocker arms to look at, we can go over some of the other brands that you might come across and that you might need to know a little bit more about. Of course, these are the Stage 5s. They're very likable. They have a long history. They have the ability to do, big cams, lots of spring pressure, whatever you want them to do, they can do it. They're fairly simple because you can use your existing shafts and everything, but of course they don't make those anymore. You can't get them anymore. Hopefully they'll start back up someday, and we'll be able to get those again, but for right now we're out of luck. Another brand that you might see on the Norris rockers, they were a good looking rocker. I heard one guy say he could break them on a top alcohol motor, but we don't run top alcohol, do we? So if you saw a set of those on the cheap, that would be a suspect. And then there was the Mopar Dick Landy rocker arms, which were similar to these, and they were good rocker arms. I don't think anybody had any complaints on those, but we just don't find them anymore. You'll see their logo on there, the DLI, Dick Landy Enterprises or Industries logo on there, and they were good rockers. One of the brands that we have available now, well, the first brand we should probably talk about, which doesn't apply to any of us, I don't think, are the Jessels. They are more expensive. They're $6,200 just for starts. And then you have to have the heads machined for the bed plate and the bolts that hold the bed plate on, because they're on pedestals. And they're top quality stuff, for 10,000 RPM super stock engines and things like that. But I don't think that applies to us. I don't know where we would find somebody that we'd trust to machine and drill and tap our heads. I mean, they give you instructions. I've got the instructions, but I don't even know if I'd trust myself to do that. I don't think they even have oiling other than what you get through the push rods. I don't know. I'm not hip to those. I think they're over our heads, shall we say. And then there's the Ray Bartons, which, well, that T&D makes those for Ray Barton. T&D also makes rockers for Edelbrock heads. And they're nice and everything, and they're a bolt-on, but $5,900. The ones they used to make for Ray Barton, mine were anodized red, and they're pretty, and they're later on they also anodized them in blue, and that's pretty. Well, now T&D doesn't want to anodize rockers. They say, oh, that's too much trouble. Oh, what are you going to do if it comes back the wrong color or something? It doesn't match. And well, you're not selling them to me cheap. If it takes you a little extra, I think you've got enough room in there at $5,900, more than a whole Hemi could have cost you for a set of rocker arms. I don't see why you can't give me the color I want. They're prettier. Don't you want your stuff to look pretty? You ought to want your parts to look pretty. The race car stuff nowadays is so beautiful. I mean, wow, it looks good, and they don't want to anodize because they think it's a little too much work. Well, for $5,900, yeah, you can do it. So I'm kind of upset about that. The Ray Barton rocker arms, of course, when we get down to, the new rocker arms that we'd probably be looking at, the Ray Bartons, the T&Ds, and those ones that we're going to test in a minute. We don't have a whole lot to choose from. The Ray Bartons are top quality stuff. His super stockers do 10,000 RPMs and massive spring loads, and he's sold them on street motors. He sold over 800 sets, and they've been out there for 24 years. So they're great. They're great. You have to use those high lift guys. They're all ball push rods, so you don't get this interference between the cup and the rocker arm. So the Ray Bartons, they're set up for ball push rods. This is one that came out of my Neon. It had Ray Barton 572 in it, and I took that massive roller cam out and put in a grandma cam with a flat tap. I think that cut it back to 800 horsepower. Surely that's enough for a guy, right? But they're ball, so you just got to remember that. And Ray Barton Of course, he's got a spray bar to spray everything, so they they last, they work, they're good. But just a little different. They don't fit under the stock valve covers, so you have to run a cast valve cover. I've run them under stage 5 valve covers, and I've run them under raised valve covers, and they probably fit under any cast valve cover, but I know they don't fit under the stock ones. So you just, but that's okay. I like cast covers, unless you're doing some kind of resto and you have to have the stamp steel. I just like the cast because I always leak oil down here, and that makes me mad. And with cast covers, you've got a machined surface, and you can run these thin gaskets, and they just don't leak. And so that's a big deal to me. So I'm a cast cover guy, and Ray's take cast covers, and that's fine. So Ray's rocker arms are 4650, I think. And, so you've got the top quality stuff, and you've got these that we're going to try today to see if they'll work for the guys that don't want to spend $1 zillion. And the T&D is another suspect for some people. But we'll go over how these others fit and see if they're going to work for us. I don't know yet. I've never tried them. All those rocker arms, other than the Jessel, I've tried all those others, and they all worked fine with me. Of course, I'm not a big roller cam 10,000 RPM kind of guy. I'm just a guy, But let's check these other things out. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to take an air impact and just take these off while they're under spring pressure and all of that. Do this right. Come on, guys. Get the ones that are loose and back off the adjusters, slide the rocker over, pull the push rods out, turn the motor over, slide those out as they come up, and then after you get all the push rods out, then take the rockers off, put the others on. Do this right. That's the sweep of the stage 5 rockers across the valve. Got no complaints there. And the exhaust is the same, right across the middle. So we know we like those. Okay, I've got the stage 5 rockers off and the Canadian rockers on. Now let's check them out. Okay, so the first thing we want to know is, do they line up with the valve tips, left to right? And I would say these are a little bit to the right. So, it's normal to have to shim, but normally you're shimming the other way. They're a little bit to the right, but it looks like the exhausts are going to need to be shimmed a little to the left, which is not a problem. You have to shim everybody's rockers, so I'm not complaining heavily. I'm not too upset about that. Of course, the intakes being a little bit to the right, you don't really have a space to shim here. And it might be different with stock cast shafts, but we have a shim here to keep the rocker from rubbing against the aluminum. But although they are a little to the right, I think they would still work fine. It's just, how you like everything perfect, but I'm not going to say you can't use that. Now we need to check the sweep across the top of the valve. So I'll put some push rods in and adjust the valves and check that out. Remember when I was building this engine, the exhaust comes real close to the top of the sleeve, and the head gasket hung into the hole everywhere on every exhaust. And so you have to trim that back to keep it from putting marks on your push rod and being ugly. So sure enough, it looks like on the number 2 exhaust, I didn't do a very good job of cutting that back so the head gasket touches that. You can't feel it. It hasn't damaged it at all. But nonetheless, you can see that I wasn't a good boy and didn't do a good job of leaving that hole. Take your time. So the first thing we want to know is, are these rocker arms going to clear the exhaust push rod on the Edelbrock heads? And wow, they do a very good job of that. And you know, they were a little too far to the right, wasn't it? Yeah, so they're going to take a couple shims, and look where it's going to go when you shim it. Look at that. Man, that's wonderful. Give them an A+ on that one anyway. The intake looks a little tight on the side there, but when you mock it up, that's not a big deal because you can grind for clearance on the intake, but you can't on the exhaust because that's got a brass sleeve in it. So you're married to whatever you got right here. So yes, that's wonderful. That's a big hurdle taken out. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over a few times, and I've marked the valve stem tips, and we're going to see what the sweep looks like, and that'll tell us what we need to know. Okay, I turned the motor over a few times. I'm trying to get it where you can see it good. Our line is right above the sweep of where the stage 5s were at. It's no, it's not right in the middle, and no, you know, I'd be happier if it was, but it's probably usable. I'm trying to get the light and shadows and everything just right, but it's really pretty close to the middle. I mean, it's really, there's nothing wrong with that at all, really. So what did we learn today? Well, the main thing we wanted to know was, were these rockers going to fit? Were these rockers going to work? Were they going to clear the exhaust push rod holes on the Edelbrock heads? And when I say Edelbrock, you know, I'm always talking about Victor Juniors, what they currently sell, not the stuff that hasn't been, not available anymore. So I guess what we learned was they turned out pretty good. Are they as nice as stage 5s? Well, no. Do we have any history on these against stage 5? Well, no. But they didn't do bad. I guess the place where they really shined was the exhaust pushrod clearance. They were wonderful there, but I noticed this pushrod was tight next to the port on this intake, but that doesn't matter because a good boy like you is going to mock it up, and he's going to see that, and he's probably going to relieve that a little bit and make sure that he's got the room and run it through the cycle and make sure that it stays clear of this port, because you can do that on the intake on these heads. You can't do it on the exhaust because it's got a brass sleeve in it, so you're married to that hole. But you can fix this. So there's a few things that are different, but you know, they're a third the money, and money still matters. And you know, if wifey doesn't see the MasterCard bill, then you know, the Ray Bartons, you know, they're good. But if money's an issue, this appears to be an option. I would say out of the two packages that people ask questions about the most, they ask about these all the time because they're seduced by the price, and they ask about Ray Bartons, and we know that the Norris is gone, we know the Dick Glandys are gone, the Mopar rockers gone, the stage 5s are gone, we know the Jessels even though I've never run them, I think we're really talking race only there. And not to mention sky high price, and you have to do some machining that might be a nightmare for you. So these are the two, these and the Ray Barton, the two that I get the most questions from. You don't have to worry about race stuff. It's been out there for 24 years that I know of, and it works. I'm sure he's got them in stock. You know, that's the easiest way to go from a, if you want top quality stuff. But otherwise, if you have to think about something like this, from what I saw today, I mean, they look really good. Now, I told you in one of them last videos to get rid of these cheesy, too long adjusters. You get the good ones from Smith Brothers, and then they got the bigger hex here to hold it when you're tightening, and they're 1.25 inches instead of 1.5 inches. I showed you how these can bust your valve covers and scar them up on the inside, and these are 1.5 inches, way too long. These aren't the only people that mail you these, by the way. But that's what we got today. So from here on, it's you to make the decision on what you want to do.